get is y'all don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Hitting the Apex Fish, joined by Evan. Evan, how's it going, man?
Great, man. It was a good weekend overall.
Good weekend for McLaren. I mean,
Yep.
we know it's been coming basically since the first few races of the season, but man, back-to-back Constructors titles is sweet. It's been, I mean, when's the last time they won two in a row? Because the last time they'd won one period was what, 2007, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, so two in a row must have been the '90s, I think. Maybe those Hakkinen years. It's been a bit. Yeah, it's sweet. It's sweet.
It is. Definitely is. Well deserved. I mean,
Yeah.
the team has been running really well lately. Overall the guys have been not quite as dominant as we thought they would be, at least in the last couple of races. But overall the team has just been doing what they got to do and getting the job done. And it was a great weekend. We thought it was going to happen, last weekend in Azerbaijan, but it didn't happen there, and we all kind of knew it was just inevitable that it was going to happen here. It would have been nice in Azerbaijan because that would have been a record, with
Yeah.
the earliest win in constructors championship history. But just to get it done in this week, it was something special, and I think I think seeing that shows, hopefully it shows that they're going to be as dominant going into this next rule set in 2026, and that they'll have something there that they're going to be able to come out and be, maybe not as dominant, but just, as good, or be able to be competing again for another one next year.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this. It hasn't. They've kind of limped to the finish here a little bit. Still one of the top, if not the top car on the grid, but it's been a while since McLaren's won a race now. With that said, I do wonder because you mentioned the 2026 car. I wonder if some focus has shifted to that, given they're going to get less wind tunnel time because they won the championship. This has been a fait accompli for a while now that they were going to do that. So at some point you're just like, we don't need to develop this car anymore. One of our two drivers is going to win the drivers, and we're going to win the constructors. So it doesn't matter if we keep developing. Like if they were in a competitive like drivers championship with another team, they'd be bringing new parts every week and pushing forward really hard. They don't need to do any of that because their car being static, yeah, it's allowing the other rest of the field to close up now. It's not going to allow them to win the drivers championship. It's going to be one of these two guys. So they're both in the same equipment. There's not really a utility in development. I do wonder. I'm hopeful that they've shifted some focus to next year because, again, like you said, want to remain on top.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely something that I can see that they're looking towards, and you know hopefully, like you said, that's what the focus is. But at the end of the day, it's one of those situations that they're confident right now, and being confident in Formula One isn't something that is the best thing in the world. It's something that's useful, but it's one of those situations like you go in there with a confident view and you're gonna get your butt kicked in some type of way that you're not expecting. You look at, prime example was Lando last week, at Azerbaijan, going out first in qualifying. He was confident that he was gonna be, up there, and he ended up, qualifying, what was it, seventh or something like that.
Yeah,
So having that confidence is good in a sense, because at least you're going out there, you're confident in the car, you're confident in yourself, all this stuff. But it's still kind of, you need to go out with the mentality of push hard, get better every single day, do the best that you can as a team, or else you're going to get into these situations that, again, the past few weeks we've seen where the car we think that it's going to go in there and it's just going to dominate because the car is so much better than everybody else. And really, some of these other teams have looked better. I mean, Mercedes looked great this week. Even Kimi, came out and drove a great race. He was making some of the more aggressive moves that we've seen anybody make at Singapore, in years. He made this year a couple overtakes, a couple late braking, situations that he had, and then George Russell just from wire to wire. This was probably the cleanest race of his career. If I can't remember any other race that I've thought of or that I can think of right now that George Russell checked out. We I don't think they showed him on
Yeah,
the
he did. He
TV
did the Max
not
Verstappen
once.
where he puts it on pole, disappears off on the first lap, and you don't see him again till the last lap. Like, oh, by the way, George Russell's winning this race comfortably. Now
Exactly.
back to the battles down the field.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was a great, fantastic performance for him in a car that, frankly, yeah, it was better this weekend. It's kind of not good enough to do that to the field, but he did it anyway. It was a
Yeah.
hell of a drive there and a tricky track where he's thrown races away at this
hmm
track. So for him to like mentally just lock in like that, really impressive stuff.
It
Really
was.
impressive from him.
It was.
As I've noted multiple times this year, he has turned a corner. I can still hate on him while respecting his game because he's driving the hell out of that car, and he's really kind of. I think Hamilton getting out of that team has been beneficial to him. It's forced more responsibility on him, and he's taken ownership of that. And you can see that race to race now, a lot
Yeah.
less. Not just not. I mean, obviously, there's nothing to complain about this time because he put the thing on pole and then pulled away, but. We haven't really seen a lot of whining on the radio like we had in years
Mm.
past. It's just a lot more mature driver, and it's showing up in the results. He's very. I mean, who would? People always said he was quick, and he was, but
Mr. Saturday.
he's been the most consistent driver this year. If that
Yes.
car should finish third, he puts it third. If it should finish fifth, he puts it fifth. Like he has been so steady, and you gotta wonder if they can get a faster car under him if he can frankly just put it in P1 every time because he's driving consistently enough to do that and fast enough to do that if the car warranted it. He's been excellent.
Well, Mercedes have been really good at starting off rule sets,
Yeah,
on
we'll
the
see
right
if they
foot.
put him in the we might be talking about George Russell as the champion next year if they put him in the right
Maybe.
car. He's got that ability. Before we
Yes.
kind of dig more into that race, the unfortunately, Evan, I do have to talk about our predictions. we
Yeah,
all
for
we
sure.
all we all did
We
poor.
all we all went bad.
Yeah, I had Lando to win, George second, Kimi third, surprise, Max and Oscar DNF. That is 0 for 5, sort of, because I had 2 DNFs, but whatever. It was bad. You did get one pick right. You had Max in second. You had Lando to win, Max second, Oscar third, so you did get second place. Surprise was Albon in the top 5. He had a little bit of a rough one this weekend. And then
Yeah.
Carly, I mean, it wasn't serious. Did have Max to win. We'll give her next for that. I don't think the surprise rest of the field DNFs was actually serious, so we won't penalize her for that one. Um, your father had Max winning, that ended up not happening, and Brandon had Lando winning, Charles second, Max third. So across all of those picks, the only one that was correct, Evan, you had Max in second. That one did come to fruition. That was
Hey,
not our finest moment from a prediction standpoint.
I will say though, you putting Kimi and Russell in the top three together, that showed that they were gonna have a good week, and you had confidence in them, having a good week, for the Mercedes team overall, which they
Yeah,
did.
I'd
So
like to take credit for that, but I put in that Max and Oscar DNF. So in my fake race, they ran into each other, which allowed that podium to happen. And instead, like we said, I mean, this was a masterclass this week from Russell to
it
just
was.
basically control the whole race. So like it wasn't even. And I mean, we're gonna get into let's get into it now a little bit, but I mean, he got a lap time deleted in Q3. And again, old Russell gets rattled, starts to play why they deleting my lap time, blah blah blah. Instead, he's like, all right, let me do it again, and he puts it on pole again. And it was that all of that maturity that we've kind of seen bits and pieces of this year was all on display this week, and fantastic drive for him. And yeah, nothing you can say. Believe me, I'm trying, but nothing negative I can say about his performance this week. He was outstanding.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, realistically, like I said before, this was probably the most dominant performance that we've seen from him. I mean, we've seen him win before, winning in what was it, Canada and places like that, where the car has an advantage because the weather was a little different or whatever, maybe, or different situations like that. They make a good strategy call. This was the first time I think that we've seen George Russell just come out and dominate a whole weekend, and it's good to see because we all do think that he has the capability of doing this. It just all depends on the car. So, it goes into what we said before. If Mercedes knocks it out of the park next year with, another dominating, new rule set car, that could be a possibility that we see this be the battle next year. Is George Russell up there in that top three battle with the likes of a Piastri or Orlando and Max and the Red Bull. So it's definitely interesting to think about because we do, again, we've said this 1,000 times, as much as me and you are both McLaren fans and we love the fact that they're doing this so dominate such a dominant year this year that they're having. We want to see competition. We want to see good racing throughout. This is fun to see that they're different drivers winning every single week. This is a fun season overall because there is this drama, because it's not Max Verstappen going out and destroying the whole field for every single race and basically walking away with the championship like McLaren did with the constructors. He was doing that with the drivers' championship the past few years. There is a competitiveness to this year that we haven't seen in a long time, and it's something that is enjoyable. It's enjoyable to watch as a racing fan. It's enjoyable to watch, as a Formula One fan, more specifically. So
Yeah, so you mentioned the competitiveness. It is really because the McLaren drivers are very competitive.
yeah,
Piastri's in front still, and we're going to look at the standings in a bit, but they're both, I would say, fair. They completely different driving styles, but both are kind of similar performance wise in terms of lap times and all. They're very close every race. Talking about 100th here, 100th there. Now this is a car that performs way better in front, so whoever's in front tends to then in the race be faster. But that's where the competition came from. It has been really, I mean, look, McLaren clinched the constructors already. It's been a dominant car, but fortunately the two drivers they have are competitive with each other, because I think if you look at the other teams that, a lot of them don't have that. And so if they have a dominant car, it does become what we saw last year, which is just max lap in the field and no one really able to compete with him. So that's been great. But I will say it is finally starting to kick off here a little bit between our boys here. Okay, so there are a couple of instances or incidents, so to speak. Obviously, the first lap one. Let's start with that. There was contact, and Piastri basically said, "So he's just allowed to push me out of the way." Um, the stewards did take a look, or do that thing where they say noted, and then decide no further action was necessary. Piastri, without directly saying this, was basically strongly implying that Lando should move out of the way and give him the place back for hitting him. The team said, "We're not doing that." He was trying to avoid Max. We're not going to penalize him for that. And Piastri was definitely not pleased with that. What was your take on overall on that? First of all, do you agree that there shouldn't be any action taken there? Because I think if you notice, I don't know if you've noticed this in the past, at least I have, when it's two teammates involved, the FIA tends to not do anything penalty wise.
yeah,
Let the team sort that out. We're not getting involved there. So I don't know that even if they thought that was penalty worthy, if they would do anything, I think that's be pretty egregious for you to get penalized for hitting your teammate in this sport. And it definitely wasn't egregious to that level. So do you think a penalty, taking the team factor out of it, that they were teammates, let's assume they were different teams, do you think that was a penalty worthy bit of contact?
I mean, to me, no, because you can see that he was trying to avoid Max, to a point. I think Lando wanted to be aggressive at the start of the race, and that's exactly what he did. He made an aggressive move. Yes, Max was there, kind of slowed him up a little bit, which then forced him to go, a little bit wide, and then I mean, they realistically they touched tires. They didn't really touch body panels a lot. I think Lando's wing damage actually came from hitting Max, wasn't it? You know, where he had that front wing,
Yeah, that's where the
damage.
damage was. It was on the left wing end plate,
Yeah.
and that went right into Max. Yep.
So it's not even like either one of them damaged their cars because of it. So that's why I think that no further action by the FIA was smart. And again, the same thing from the team. The fact that they didn't actually tell Lando, hey, you hit him, you got to move over. That was the right decision because we've been talking all year about these decisions that they've been making about, oh, this person should go in front of this person should go in front of this person, vice versa, however they played it out. But every single instance that's happened has been because of an issue that the team makes to the drivers, not that the drivers are doing themselves. They're letting them race, and that's exactly what that was a racing incident. It was a situation of Lando being aggressive and basically saying, I'm putting my car in this spot, whether you're going to be there or not, that's on you. And that was a move that we want to see out of Lando in this championship, because realistically that was the position that he needed to be in. He needed to put himself ahead of Oscar at the beginning of that race. He needed to get up there just to give himself a chance to be able to make some more points and to start catching up to him a little bit. Did he do enough? No, because he really
Well,
should have gotten past Max, but
yeah,
he
that was
needed to he
big.
needed to get there. He needed to at least put himself in a position to where he was ahead of Oscar, to where then throughout the race he could make the decision of, when they asked him, "Hey, do you want to let Oscar go first, or do you want to come into the pit first?" And he said, "No, no, no. I want to come in first. I want to, get my tires to try to go after, Max, or to cover off. I think it was Leclerc at that time or whatever."
Yeah,
But
which is absurd. That's a separate instance I do want to talk about. Just on the contact, yeah, Lando didn't have a choice. He could not slot in behind Oscar and follow him around. And I know he only made up 3 points this weekend, but that's a 6 point swing because if Oscar gets 15 instead of 12, it's three less for Lando and three more for Oscar. So he knew that overtake was worth 6 points. He had to go for it. That was the
exactly.
time to do it. We talked about this, when we did the preview. It's not easy to overtake here, and we saw that in real time during the race. That was his opportunity. And he was actually, I think, to your point, he was trying to sweep around and get Max too, and Max was going so slow, I think, defending that, he had to back out of it, and that's where the contact was actually with Max. It wasn't, I mean, he bumped tires with Oscar, but that was actually minimal. It was much more damaging was the contact with Max. Yeah, I'm curious what the FIA would have done if it was a different team. Like if it wasn't hitting his teammate, just because it would have put all sorts of political pressure on them. Like, hey, this guy went out of control and barged into us, and where are we supposed to go? He knocked me off the track. Like, because it's a street circuit. Like Oscar can't really. He got barged off the track essentially. He was just a bystander there. So there's that angle too, which is kind of like, well, what's he supposed to do about it? And if it's different teams, they're going to be saying, oh, so he can just drive into our team. Well, watch us drive into them next race. And so I think it was probably good to his teammates, so the FIA didn't have to parse that because I think it was marginal. I think if they had said 5-second penalty for causing a collision, I'd be like, okay, I guess. I mean, he did hit him, and kind of used it as an aid to overtake, actually. So in that sense, you kind of be like, at least give the place back or something, right? I mean, with that said, should McLaren have done anything is a tougher one, just because. So I think I generally agree with you. Let them race. It was hard racing, but it wasn't cheap or unfair. However, my concern there, if I'm them, I guess it doesn't matter because they won the constructors anyway. But I think the way Oscar interpreted it is very different from the way most of us are looking at and saying racing incident. It was borderline, it was marginal, but it was still fair. It wasn't like cheap. And I think he thought, no, he ran into me on purpose to push me out of the way and go in front. And next time I'm behind him, I'm going to do the same thing. I think that's at least the way I've read his messages on the radio. He's obviously not going to say it that way. It
Yeah.
was like, oh, so we can just drive into each other now. Kind of like, okay, if that's allowed, that's allowed. Now he didn't really have the opportunity to overtake in this race, but if Lando's in front at the next race in the first corner and Oscar's right behind him, I think we might see a turnabout as fair play situation here where, and I think that's what I think, McLaren obviously going to debrief and they talk through all of that after they're done drinking and celebrating the championship. So, I'm assuming that's going to be a point of emphasis. They're going to have to reinforce, hey, this is why that was okay. I don't want to see you trying to repeat that because I could see the wheels turning in Oscar's head. If that's allowed now. And of course, when you take that attitude, you always take it one step further. And then next thing you know, they're knocking each other off the track, which again, they've won the Constructors already, and one of these two guys is going to win the driver, so it's probably not that big of a concern. But that was the only thing I'd worry about, is that he felt, which I don't think is justified, but he certainly felt that they were just saying Lando can knock him off the track, and that's fine.
Well, I mean, we've seen Oscar make these types of moves. Think about Monza last year.
We've also seen him get criticized and have them tell him to back out when he tries to send it, and like kind of, well, that was close, Oscar. Don't do that. Remember, papaya rules, all this crap. So this is the first time I can recall them kind of saying that contact is okay. Because normally the trail driver, they say papaya rules, and if they even like try a little bit, they're like, hey, what do you think you're doing? Clean pass only, no sending it, and then in this case, like, that's fine.
I think where the difference is the Verstappen, involvement in it. The fact that Lando was slowing down because of Verstappen. He ended up hitting Verstappen. I'm actually more surprised that the incident that was noted by the FIA was the Lando and Oscar incident and not the Lando and Verstappen incident. I think that would have really changed the dynamic of it, because then really Oscar would have no leg to stand on in that situation, because even the FIA is saying, hey, the incident was really Lando and Max. You were a bystander. Yes, you were sitting there in basically the wall of the pinball machine, but the actual players in the incident were Max and Lando. The fact that they put it as Oscar and or as Lando and Oscar, kind of, I guess, made it in his mind, or made it in McLaren's mind, that it was more about them than anything else. But I mean, to me, that's where the difference is that in my eye of it, the incident was Lando and Max had an incident. Oscar was just there. Oscar sees it as, oh, Lando was just trying to pass me and he ran into me. And if you're looking at it like that, man, you're not looking at it as a team. You're looking at it as yourself, which I understand. You guys have already won the team championship. Now it's about, who's winning that driver championship. Is it going to be Oscar? Is it going to be Lando? So he's going to do everything he can to gain an advantage. And whether this sets him up for another situation down the road in another race, we're going to have to wait and find out. But that could be one of those things that he's thinking of.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely like, I got the sense that his attitude was, hey, we're supposed to be teammates. What is this?
Yeah.
And I think, Oscar's still in, we're going to look at the championship standings when we get to that part of the show, but he's still in control. So, I mean, I don't think, I think his attitude right now is just, let me see this out.
Yeah.
I think if it gets, tightens up and we start getting those last few races and now it's within one, that place actually could flip the championship, I think we'll see a lot more aggressive behavior. So the second one you already touched on a little bit, which is, they asked Lando, as the lead driver, do you want to, can we let Oscar pit first to cover off Leclerc? And then we'll pit you second. And he said last time they asked, he said, go ahead. They had a slow pit stop when he pit. He ended up behind Oscar. They had to swap the places back, which they got criticized for, even though they explained it wasn't the slow pit stop. It's because Oscar was allowed to pit first. That closed the gap up. It was actually both, if you look at the timing. If Lando had pit first, even with that slow pit stop, he would have come out in front of Oscar. It was the Oscar essentially undercut him and got the benefit of the slow pit stop in that race. This time, Lando was like, I'm not messing around with that. I don't really give a crap where Oscar is. It's not my concern. I'm pitting first, and he did. So first, what do you think? What do you think about Lando's response there? in terms of basically saying, no, I'm not going to be a team player. I'm going to go first. I'm in front. I get to do that.
Well, again, it's just like what we were saying about Oscar. Thinking about himself in that situation. You've now had what 2 or 3 races that Lando has pitted second and had a bad stop. That we've seen, and because of those bad stops, it's either put him in a position to where it made his race more difficult, or flatly just taken him out of a battle that he was in.
Right.
So I don't blame him for saying, pit me first. As a matter of fact, I want him to say stuff like that. I want him to be the one that says, no, I'm in the lead right now. It should be my decision on or at least I should have input on
Right.
who's going to get pitted first. Because at the end of the day, McLaren could have easily just said Oscar pit. They're the ones who are going to
they
make
could
the
have
choice.
just, I mean, Lando wouldn't even know he's pitting. You can just pit him.
Exactly. So the fact that they gave him the option, the fact that they asked for his opinion on it was kind of interesting to me. But do I blame him for saying no? I want to pit first. Of course not. You can't. These guys at this point have to be selfish. They have to be a me first type of mentality. Especially because those two are now so tight in this championship. Yes, Oscar still has a pretty commanding lead, but he's still within striking distance.
Right, yes.
He's one engine failure away from Lando being up there, even with a second place. No, not with a second place yet. Almost with a second place.
But I mean, if Oscar DNS and Lando wins the next race, Lando's in front. Like it's that close. So yeah, it's one within one race. Like that's live. I guess my I honestly I don't know what McLaren is doing. So I agree it's good they asked for input. They should have just pit Norris first. Like he's the lead driver. You give him the optimal strategy. Period. Stop screwing around with this because to your point, there's hidden loss too. And actually, to your other point, Oscar had a messed up pit stop because for whatever reason they can't do 2 in a row. So Lando's like, I'm going first this time because you always screw up the second one, and lo and behold, they screwed Oscar's up. But also, like Lando ends up, in striking distance of Max. He couldn't get the overtake done. They were going to pit him second after Oscar to give him a suboptimal strategy when he's fighting the guy in front of him. Yeah. Like that doesn't make sense. Number one, like if he didn't overrule them and say no, I'm pitting first, he wouldn't have even gotten up to Max.
Yeah.
Like what are they doing there? The Constructors it's over, man. Like you don't need to maximize the 2-car value anymore. So I don't know what they were doing there. The second thing is, in front of you have the timing and scoring, right? They were covering off Leclerc. He's 30 seconds. Like what is wrong with them? Yeah. They make these boneheaded decisions. Oh, we're at risk from Fernando Alonso. He's in 17th, man. You're not at risk for him. And often I've noticed when they pit this, and sometimes it's Lando too, when they pit the second car first, they're covering off something that does not need to be covered off.
Yeah.
And in this case, this isn't even close. So what were they covering?
Well, I think in that situation, this was only a one-stop race, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Like I don't. You can't really see where they came from with it. I mean, Antonelli was the closest person to Oscar. When Oscar came out of his pit stop, though, he was what, 20 seconds behind Lando, 16 seconds behind Lando, something like that. I mean, he made up a lot of ground, but that was because there was a lot of free air, in front of him.
Right. And then Lando was getting held up by Max,
Yeah, Lando was getting held up by Max, and there was traffic and all that stuff. So he made up a lot of ground on him. But, it's weird to say. When we saw it during the race, it kind of made a little bit more sense because you could see that Leclerc was right there.
I think Leclerc. I think they were also worried about sending Oscar out into traffic and that as well. But it's just run the optimal strategy, and the lead car gets priority. Like this is not. It's almost like they're overcomplicating things and making them worse. Like you didn't need to ask him. Just pit Lando first. It's the right strategy. He's your lead car. If Oscar's in front, you pit Oscar first. He's the lead car. Because they weren't. This was not a situation like has often been the case this year where they're running 1-2, and if you pit the second driver first, he holds on to second. Even if the first driver ends up behind him, we'll swap the places back. We get our 1-2, and the lead driver wins the race anyway. He went from 1 to 1. He doesn't care. they were not in the middle of the pack, but there were a couple of cars in front of Lando. You're asking him to sacrifice time when he's trying to make up ground there? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, the idea that they even considered, like, having him waste time to let Oscar pit first to cover off some mythical threat that wasn't there when he's trying to make up ground forward. He needs every 10th of a second.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand what they were thinking. Like, they're over-managing some of this.
Yeah, and I mean that even came into play just watching them with that pit stop strategy. I mean, did you notice they did a fake pit stop? They brought their team out trying to see if they could get Max to jump into the pits because the undercut really wasn't the optimal strategy this race. We saw these guys going long on that first stint, and Max was on the medium tires, so they really wanted to try to see if they would get Max to go in. They had all the tire changers, everybody go out, in the pit lane, pretending like they were going to have Lando come in, and then at the very last second, they're like, stay out, stay out, stay out. And they had Lando stay out. And I mean, you're right. It's just overcomplicating things for no reason. I mean, what was the reason to do that? Max wasn't going to fall for that. He was going to stay out on those medium tires and wear them, to shreds. He doesn't care. That's what he does. Or was he on the mediums, or he might have been on the softs?
I think he started on the softs, and then went. Yeah,
exactly. So he was on the softs, and everybody else was on mediums, or the majority of everybody was on mediums. Yeah, so he blew through those tires quick. Lando caught up to him, and then they were trying to basically get him to go pit first.
Yeah,
and he really didn't care.
He's not going to do that because again, they knew coming in, so they started on the softs because one, they were hoping they'd get a better start against Russell. They did not. That side of the track appeared to be a little slower. And second, like, they know it's hard to overtake here. The best chance, they were obviously more worried about Piastri was in front of Norris than Lando. It ended up being Lando that almost came up as right through his gearbox. But they're thinking, worst case, we get off to a good start here. We hold that position. You can't overtake around here. I don't care if I wear my tires out first. You're just going to go slower behind me because I'm not moving out of the way to let you, take advantage of the fact that you have those tires that'll last longer. Because once my tires go, you're driving my pace. Doesn't matter how much life is in your tires, and that worked. So yeah, they were never gonna. Again, they're Red Bulls, and they're like, "This is our optimal strategy on the softs. That's when we're gonna pit. I don't give a crap what you're doing." And McLaren is trying to play this weird 3-dimensional chess, and it's just like, you have the fastest car, just run the optimal strategy, and you'll end up near the front or at the front. And yeah, they seem to be overmanaging a little bit there, and especially with the two drivers now. Now that's all the we've known. Basically, the constructors' title has been over for months, but it's officially over now. So, it's all just the drivers. So how they manage that, they need to not get involved and just say, other than to say, look, this is the optimal strategy. Each car has their optimal strategy. They're going to run that. If there's a situation where those two strategies collide, meaning like this car should pit first or that one or whatever, the lead car gets to run their optimal strategy. And the trail car just has to deal with it and adjust. And that's that. And then don't do any more of this papaya rolls crap. Just let them drive.
Yeah.
Let them drive. There's nothing bad can happen. You're going to finish first and second in the Drivers' Championship, and you've won the Constructors. Just let them drive at this point.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, we spent 30 minutes talking about McLaren. What else? And a little bit about George Russell. At least we didn't talk about the winner who dominated the whole race. We talked about him more than the camera showed him. But what else stood out for you in this race? There was that whole, Lewis Hamilton thing where he eventually got penalized that they kind of didn't show at all on the actual race coverage. You kind of had to go find it later. But he was holding up. He had dealing with a brake issue. Was holding up Fernando Alonso, barely held him up to the finish line, but I guess the way he was able to do that was by cutting the corners repeatedly, and he was penalized 5 seconds for it. So there was that, but they didn't really even show much of that on TV. But I will say, shouting out Alonso, hell of a drive. He dropped way back, had issues in his pit stop, charged back through the field up to 8, and then got the penalty in the 7th, but he was right there on Lewis's gearbox at the end anyway. Like, he'd made up all that ground. Just a fantastic drive from him. while he was feuding with his pit wall. So he was
That
multitasking.
that's what I was gonna say. I do want to put in my recommendation for Radio Call of the Year for Fernando Alonso. You know, if you guys keep on talking to me, I'm just gonna turn off my radio.
Yeah, it was like
Like
if you
basically,
talk to me every lap, I'm gonna turn my radio off or something.
that was fantastic. Another classic, you know, Fernando Alonsoism, I guess you could say.
Yep.
You know, but I do want to shout out Ali Berman. Top 10, another top 10 finish was really good for him. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Kimi Antonelli had some amazing moves during this race, but somebody who really stood out to me didn't finish as high as probably he could have finished, but still ran a pretty decent race overall and showed a lot of grit because his car started to die on him, was Hajar. I mean that they were talking during the race about how that he was having engine trouble. He was, you know, the car was basically dying on him and he was battling with people. You know, Fernando Alonso and him went at it for a little while. I think he had it out with Lewis for a little bit. You know, there was a point where Lewis was behind him that Lewis just couldn't get past him. And yes, I understand this track isn't the easiest track to pass on. But still, you have a hurt Racing Bulls versus a Ferrari, and the Ferrari was still having issues trying to get around that hurt Racing Bull. You know, Isaac Hadjar had a pretty decent defensive drive. You know, overall, yes, he ended up a lap down. Yes, you know, he lost a lot of places and he had a frustrating day, but he mitigated a lot of that, you know, a lot of the downside that he could have had by being aggressive and running a good race overall. And on top of that, with him and Yuki, they probably helped out Max more than anybody else at the end of that race because you saw right where they both were. They were giving Max such a tow at certain points when Lando was coming right up behind him and Lando was trying to gain that momentum on him with those DRS zones. I mean, that's something that I think we need to talk about a little bit more. Should a car that's getting lapped be able to provide a DRS for a car that's lapping them? That's something that's an interesting thought to me because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, these guys are just going to or keep Max in this, you know, perpetual DRS train with Lando behind him. On top of that, you know, they're going to be just fast enough not to get the blue flag
Yeah.
because they're, you know, eventually the stewards are going to say, hey, you got to let him go. You got to let him go. But on top of that, now you have two basically Red Bull team cars that they can plop right between Max and Lando and keep, you know, Lando a little bit more, you know, further
Yeah.
behind. Lando, I would say, did a pretty decent job of getting through that traffic between, you know, Hajar and Yuki. But you saw there was a good 5 or 6 laps there where Max was getting a tow off of one of them and it was really helping him out and it was putting Lando in a position to where Lando couldn't make that end road. That and Lando was stuck at that 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, you know, seconds behind Max for basically the last 15, 20 laps and it just got frustrating. And I'm sure he
Yeah.
was, you know, feeling it more than anybody else because there's nothing you can do at that point. At this track, at this, you know, style of circuit, you're not going to get past a Max Verstappen. He's going to make his car 3 times as wide as it really is.
Yep. Yeah, and of course Lando has a lot more to lose than Max at this point in the season, so it's not like he can send it up the inside and be like, all right, this is going to be do or die. If it was the last race of the year, he probably would have had to do that.
Oh yeah,
But
for
it's
sure.
not right now. So, yeah, no, it's a good question on the lapped cars providing DRS service. Look, you're supposed to move out of the way, so why does the other car need DRS? So probably shouldn't. That might be a rule change they need to do. Like, why does it? If I'm that much faster than you, that you're getting a blue flag, and you're required to slow down and move out of the way, why do I also need my rear wing open? That doesn't make any sense. I will say the one thing I would say to that is that if that is the case, then as when blue flags are waving, none of the cars in that area should get DRS. Because I don't think it's fair that, let's say, they both Lando and Max and Lando come up on this pack of cars, and then it's as even if they're doing the best job possible of slowing down, getting out of the way, they're still going to slow the lead car down. In this case, it was Max. To me, if they're saying, okay, Max doesn't get DRS, Lando shouldn't get it off Max either in that segment, because now you're like double penalizing Max. He's got to slow down, and Lando gets the DRS off of him. To me, it's a double penalty almost. So as long as they say, okay, there's blue flags, Max, you don't get DRS, neither do you, Lando, because you're not getting it off Max because he has to slow down to move around these. So if he doesn't get that advantage for, having cars in front of him on track, you shouldn't either. Then I'd be okay with it. But I don't think it's fair to say the trail car still gets DRS and the lead car doesn't, and the lead car has to navigate around all these blue flagged cars while the trail car can just basically follow them through that pack and get the DRS coming out of it. To me, that's a little bit too much. But yeah, no, I don't think there should be DRS if you're lapping someone. They're moving out of the way anyway. Yeah. And to your point, I mean, this is an age-old topic, and it's reared its head multiple times since Red Bull has owned two teams, which they're technically not allowed to do. I should point that out, that it's still illegal, but they still do it, and for whatever reason, it's like wink, wink. It doesn't matter until it matters. Like you said, we don't know. We have no evidence that they intentionally sat there and provided the DRS, and then kind of optimize Max's strategy. But it's always possible to do that. There have been and again, it wouldn't matter if it's Yuki because teammates can coordinate all that. But the issue is, does Red Bull have 4 cars on the circuit to coordinate across when everyone else has 2? They've always denied there's any collaboration on that level between the 2 garages. But there have been instances in the past, like when it was AlphaTauri and before that, when it was Toro Rosso, where it was kind of like questionable. Like, did they just sacrifice like Gasly's race so that Max could get an advantage? Because it sure looks like it, and it's like doing stuff like, let me pit the junior team car, and they happen to come out right in front of the guy who's competing with Max. Whoa, look what happened there, and that's shucks. And then that car ends up finishing 20th because it was a terrible strategy for them. You're like, hey, that looks shady. There's never been any proof of that, though. But, that's the risk you're going to run into as you inexplicably, allow 2 teams to be owned by the same parent company like this. And in fact, it's the whole thing is shady. The Racing Bulls provide drivers up to Red Bull. I'm sure all the teams would love, hey, I have a junior team I can put my young drivers in to cut their teeth, and if they're good enough, bring them up to the senior team. I mean, Red Bull has been doing that for years, and it's an unfair advantage that they have.
Well, I mean, Mercedes kind of does a little bit with Williams.
Not really. I mean, it's been George Russell's the only one that's come through, right?
I mean, the Williams has kind of always been, especially the later years nowadays, since they've been running those Mercedes engines, that they've kind of been that second, not second.
I mean, Latifi flat out cost Lewis Hamilton a championship.
That's true.
No, I think, unless I'm missing some, I mean, Lewis and Valtteri were there so long there wasn't really a spot, but George Russell, I think, is the only one that's come up through there. Like, they didn't park Antonelli there, for example, when I guess they could have. And there's no way Sainz or Albon's coming to Mercedes. So, like, I think it's very different when it's literally the same owners. I mean, Christian Horner gets fired. They just took the team principal off the other team. Like, I mean, this is insane if you think about it.
No, it is.
Like, how much coordination is actually allowed. So it's not a far leap to think, they probably talk race strategy a little bit, even though they're not supposed to, if they're doing all this other stuff. Like, they're promoting people off of one team onto the other one to take over. They're swapping drivers back. I mean, right there, we're looking at the screen. Those 2 were teammates at the beginning of this year. They swapped them. They swapped Yuki up to Red Bull. Like, this is all happening out in the open, and that's all allowed for some reason. So, of course, like, people are going to assume if you can do all of that out in the open when technically you're not supposed to, why wouldn't you be collaborating on strategy?
Yeah. And I mean, this situation that we're talking about here with the lapped cars is something that doesn't happen a lot anymore in Formula One. It used to happen a lot more, but this is one of the only tracks and races where a top 10, a point scorer is getting lapped.
Yeah,
That doesn't happen that much anymore.
good point.
Singapore's is its own, kind of special place. It's a track that is very unique to itself with the weather, with the heat, with the time that they race at night. It's definitely its own beast, but it is something that does need to be discussed, and it is something that we hope that the FIA kind of wants to consider, or at least tries to keep an eye on. But you never know with these situations. It's all about money. It's all about money, and that's always going to be the main thing. That's why you can have a Ferrari team that hasn't won a championship in so long and still makes more money than anybody else on the field. That's why you could have a team like Aston Martin come out there and have a driver that's not competitive in any of the races that he's in, but still be in one of the top 20 seats in driving, in motorsports racing. It's all about the money. That's what it's always been about.
Yeah,
That's
which
what
is
it's
why
always
it's
will be
so
about.
bizarre though, because like I understand when they started this agreement, when they let Red Bull essentially break the rules as an exception, F1 wasn't healthy. There were teams failing every year.
Yeah.
Now they're in demand. Now they're sitting there making Cadillac do all these hoops and basically fire Michael Andretti to come in. Just make Red Bull sell AlphaTauri to them for $1 billion. They'll pay it. Like
Yeah.
this is not your father's Formula One now. This is a healthy franchise model where the slots on the grid are worth more than any operating costs or anything in the team. And again, Red Bull having two of them it is ridiculous. And it's always it's the unknowns that raise into question the legitimacy of some, like, we don't know how much collaboration is happening. We do know they're allowed to do things that are illegal for other teams, and they do that out in the open. So who the hell knows?
Yep.
I will say, since we're on Red Bull, as we kind of we'll pivot to the standings and previewing Singapore in a second. But man, Yuki,
Yeah.
just I mean, they
Hey,
obviously weren't
listen,
going to do.
you
They've
can't say
obviously made
anything
that
wrong about it.
decision. Yeah, I mean, they obviously made the decision not to swap drivers again in the same season. But clearly, I mean, look, when the junior team is finishing ahead of the senior team against right on the screen in front of us, like there's a problem there. But
And the junior
yeah,
team in a car that was hurt.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I said
true,
it
true. It
earlier,
wasn't even.
but
Yeah. No, good
Hadjar's car
point.
was hurt, and he still held off Yuki.
Yeah, I
And they
don't.
were battling for what, the last 15, 20 laps. I think they
Yeah,
were
yeah,
they
and
were with
Yuki
each other.
couldn't. I mean, it is still. I mean, I know we've been watching it all year. It is
Yeah.
still shocking to see that Red Bull livery not be able to get around these.
Yeah.
It's not just the racing bulls, like these cars that are clearly in. Like I think Max is one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history. He should still not be consistently finishing 10 spots ahead of his teammate. Like
Well,
this is
remember
bad.
last year we were all sitting here saying Checo's the worst driver. We haven't seen where what happened to Checo. Checo's not driving this car good.
Well, we're gonna see
You know,
Checo next year. So.
yeah, I mean, but we literally were sitting here last
Yeah,
year at this time, contemplating what happened to Checo, and Checo told us straight up, "It's not me, guys. It's the car. Like I'm doing everything I can, but this car is just not right." He said
yeah,
it
no,
straight up.
but I'm sorry, but Checo's full of shit because Max won the championship easily last year, and we can say it's the driving style and all that. It's not
Yeah,
worth 10 spots. There is a way to drive that car much faster than that second driver's been doing, and you know that because Checo was doing that until last year. They didn't
yeah,
radically redesign the entire car. He lost. Look, I think we're going to see a. Frankly, I think Cadillac has set themselves up for a pretty big disaster, hiring two drivers that are pretty far past their prime. Like there was a time when
yeah,
Checo was quicker, and there was a time when Valtteri was quicker.
yeah.
That time has come and gone, and I don't know what they're thinking getting two washed up drivers in there. Like I think it's gonna be a disaster. And look, I think we're so used to people like actually like someone like Fernando Alonso, just like, oh, back for your 57 or whatever many years he's been in Formula One, and he's still good. He's not as good as he was 15 years ago.
No,
He's still good though. He's still one of the best drivers in the world, and
yeah,
certainly worthy of being in Formula One. But no one in their right mind is thinking, like, put that guy in a McLaren or in a, well, definitely not McLaren, but like it actually is pissed off half the front of the grid in a Red Bull. Like, it's because he's pissed off Ferrari too. But no one's like thinking about doing that right now. And so to me, it makes sense to like for Red Bull, hey, we're gonna move on from Checo because he's past his prime, and his prime was nowhere near what Alonso's was. So when guys like him and Valtteri start slipping, like they shouldn't be in the top teams. I just think they've completely fumbled this. I mean, for a team that, has basically infinite money, and given that driver salaries don't count on the cost cap, what the hell they're doing with this driver lineup? It's Max and a bunch of crap, essentially. Hadjar turned out to be good, and he's being put into the junior team, which is what the junior team is for, put the young drivers in there. Why they thought Liam Lawson was worthy of Red Bull, why Yuki is still kicking around to just have a business relationship with Honda. Like, that's not what a big team does. So, like, to me, they fumble that. Like, go out and pay a proper number 2 driver, which might be Hadjar now because he's proven it. But, like, there was no reason to, like, oh, let's go to Liam Lawson. They have money. Go buy someone.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why this car has been a problem. But, yeah, for me, I mean, it's honestly visibly jarring to see the Red Bull, like, back in the pack, not having pace to overtake these faster cars, and they cut to Max and he's up at the front. It's just like, dude, it's the same car. It's the same car. Anyway, we spent a lot of time on that. So the looking at the driver standings, obviously this is the only race, the only championship still in play. Piastri, as we said, the gap did close. It is 22 points, which is a race win and a DNF. There's also a sprint race this weekend, so there's more points available. But that's why you talked about this earlier. Like, he had to go for it. This is why. If you put Lando at 311 points and Oscar at 339, all of a sudden it's more than one race.
Yeah.
He has to finish ahead of Oscar every race at the very least. If he does that, that lead will slowly start coming down.
Yeah.
And if he wins a race, he gets a bigger chunk. Right? But for sure he has to keep finishing in front of Oscar.
Yeah.
And look, it's not a lot of points, but he gained 3 points, and that put him within a race win. But again, that overtake was worth 6. So, like, he has to go for it, and I think we're going to continue to see that aggression from him. That is kind of the only, unless we care between Hulkenberg and Isaac Hadjar, that is kind of the only battle in the driver standings, kind of in the top 10 here. It's kind of spread out. Obviously, Max is now, 41 points behind Lando. He's probably not going to be able to, even if he drives his tail off, be able to make up that much ground. That probably require multiple DNS from Lando for Max to come into second, and first is well out of the picture. But yeah, so it's really the top. I mean, look, if you want to battle in the driver's standing, it's in the place you want it, the top 2. So that is kind of what to watch. It's honestly just like everyone else is just there. It's where are those 2 in relation to each other? That is going to be what to watch going forward. Now, constructors, obviously, we've talked endlessly about McLaren winning the constructors title, but that is where there is still some stuff to play with. George Russell has planted his flag there and vaulted Mercedes' gap now. It was Ferrari, if you recall, Ferrari was in second much of the year. Mercedes overtook them in the last race, and now George Russell has cemented that lead. But, oh, Yuki. There are 8 points between the Ferraris and the Red Bulls, and Max is getting no help from his teammates. And oh man, he's trying to finish third by himself, essentially, and he's damn near done it. So that's definitely one to watch, is Max against the 2 Ferraris. Can he get more points than them on a week-to-week basis? He has been the last several races where that gap is closed up. That's a battle to watch. That also might be the only one, because again, when you get, I know Racing Bull's only 4 points ahead of Aston Martin, but it's hard to make up 4 points on that part of the grid, because you're all competing for those 7, 8, 9 spots. There's not that many points available down there to begin with, so that is certainly another thing to watch. But yeah, really the battle here is kind of a little bit second to third, but certainly third and fourth is right in there, and that'll be one to watch the rest of the way. Especially, can Yuki for at least one race, help his teammate out. I mean, finish in the top 6 or 7 or 8 even, and it's an improvement over what he's doing.
Then it's a battle.
Yeah, so it's 8 points, but it does really feel like it's Max against the 2 Ferraris to see who can come in third there. I think George Russell's done a good job kind of putting Mercedes with a little bit of a gap now. Ferrari goes and wins a race, that'll close back down. But I mean, we talk about this a lot with the Drivers' Championship, but obviously it applies to the Constructors as well. That gap from first to second is where a majority of the points spread comes from.
Yeah.
So if you can win a race, that can be like a game changer, and that's what obviously George Russell did this weekend. So Ferrari almost has to answer that to get back up in there.
I mean, realistically, though, do you think Red Bull cares whether they're third or fourth? Because, yeah, they're going to get a little bit more money for third, but they're getting more wind tunnel time back.
Yeah, I don't know that they care. I think from a business standpoint, it's probably. I think it's probably better for them to finish fourth from like, hey, the wind tunnel time, and we don't need the money.
Exactly.
From a optics standpoint, they want to finish as high as possible. It is a competition, and so I think they would like to overtake Ferrari just to have that over Ferrari and to finish higher in the stand. It's not a good look for Red Bull to be finishing fourth. Yeah. And if they can overtake Ferrari and get to third, it's still not where they want to be, which is 1, but it's something at least. Like, because right now, I mean, we've talked about this a lot. There is, and you can actually the standings are very good for this. You can kind of see it. Like McLaren's run away with it, but there's that cluster second, third, and fourth. And assuming next year McLaren comes back a little than this dominant, which I think is a fair assumption. New car, that they're not just going to keep that gap. There are kind of 4 teams right now. Obviously, there's another team coming to the grid with money. Aston Martin is going to get the full Audi infusion soon, so they'll start. Kick Saubers. So they're going to start hopefully being more competitive. That's going to take a lot of time. There is really 4 teams where you're like, okay, they have the budget and the commitment and the history and the knowledge of car building to be competitive for the championship next year.
Yeah.
And Red Bull doesn't want to be fourth out of those. Like that's where they're sitting. Like they're not competing with the 6 teams below them. They're competing with the 4, with the 3 above them. And so to me, I think that's important. And also, look, again, we don't know what their team structure looks like going forward, right? Christian Horner's fired in the middle of the year. And, they named someone and he's done reasonably well, I think they would say. But, is it his job next year? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Because that was an emergency appointment. They might think about restructuring the entire team. So, if I'm in charge over them, like, we got to show them that we can win this thing. And for them, like, the best they can do right now is Max finishing third in the drivers, which he will, and the team finishing third in the constructors. And especially, look, we've almost gotten used to it, but Max Verstappen essentially finishing third in the constructors by himself is insane.
Yeah.
And I think it's something for that team to point to and say, hey, yes, this guy is an unbelievable talent and multiple world champion, and you put him in a car and it's worth a half a second a lap or whatever you want to say, right? But you can also say, hey, there's so much potential in this if we get the right second driver.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to finish higher up the grid. It's, they are selling advertisements, they're doing all this stuff. So I don't think they care at all about the financial windfall from finishing a third, to your point. Like, that doesn't, they have that in their couch cushions. If they shake them, it'll fall out. They don't need it.
That is also interesting to just look at the optics of, there's 6 races left in the championship, and McLaren has doubled the team in second place.
I mean, the gap is. I mean, look, we've been watching it in real time,
doubled,
and so it's kind of a little bit less jarring, but it's an insane gap. Like, this is
that's incredible.
This is, as to your point, there are, just counting now. You're correct. There are 6 races left. We glossed over this earlier because McLaren kind of fouled up the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but like that was going to be the fastest to clinch it ever, as you mentioned earlier, and so they were 1 race off of that. This is maybe after the season, we can look back on the domination of this car, and it also goes to show you what happens when you not just build that top car, but put two
Quality
championship caliber
drivers.
drivers in it that are actually, for the most part, being team players.
Yeah.
Because Mercedes did something similar, and Nico and Lewis basically tried to kill each other off and on the track, and it took points away. Like, they crashed into each other multiple times, they caused issues for each other, they blocked each other, and it cost them some points, which is why that wasn't finished a lot earlier. I mean, and McLaren hasn't done any of that. Like, they've kept their drivers have been kept in check. This domination is kind of unprecedented. It's insane. It's insane, and we've got. It's one of those things. It was kind of like Max last year. It was like, how crazy it is they just winning this easily, but you don't really get used to it. It's just like you stop really paying attention to it. Yeah, that gap is nuts.
When was the last time we saw a team with two drivers this good?
With the car too.
With the car too.
Hmm.
Because I see similarities to another McLaren lineup.
You might be thinking, I was going to answer the question, which I think you might be headed for. Is this 2007 with Lewis and Fernando?
No, I was
Okay.
gonna go even further back because
Prost and Senna.
yeah, because you see a lot of the reckless abandonment and go for a gap that isn't there in Lando, and you see a lot of the calculated, smooth, just tactical out of Piastri that we saw from Prost. You see a lot of that in each one of those drivers. Now, the raw talent of Senna isn't there with Lando. Lando's a great driver, but Senna was generational. But you see kind of that similar. He's gonna go for a gap if it's there. He's gonna say F it at some point, and that was always what Senna did. And Prost was always that I'm gonna take X amount of risk and X amount of percentage of danger, and I'm not gonna go any further than that. And I mean, we have seen Oscar make some amazing moves, but a lot of them have been really calculated moves, like the move at Monza this year going outside of Lesmo 1 or Lesmo 2, I forget which one it was. It was a move that we all sat there and went, oh my God, that's an amazing move. We've never seen that move before. But he did it like if it was nothing. It wasn't a shocking move. It wasn't a Lando going in under Max at the Red Bull ring. It wasn't the Lando moves that we've seen him make where he just basically tries to dive in as quick as possible, like how he crashed in Australia this year. Going after these gaps that just really weren't there. So I kind of see a similarity between that and to me those were two of the best drivers of all time on the same team, battling each other for the championship. These guys two of the best drivers of all time. I wouldn't go that far, but they're definitely two of the best drivers in this time frame. So
yeah, and and I guess that Fernando and Lewis season, if you recall, they threw away the drivers' championship, essentially running into each other. There was Fernando sitting in the pit box to make sure Lewis couldn't get his pit stop and get another qualifying lap, and there was all that stuff going on that ended up, again, I think Lewis lost the championship by a point that year, and Fernando was like a point behind. They easily won the Constructors. But that was a 1-year thing. To your point, the Prost and Senna was, a several-year relationship, and that's where we're headed with these two. They're not going anywhere. So, just because, if Oscar closes this out, Lando's not going to come in next year thinking he's the number 2 driver. He's going to come in to take that spot. And so this has the potential to, be a multi-year battle where they kind of trade punches. And, maybe if Oscar wins this year, maybe next year will be Lando's year to be in front of him. And because I don't think either of them are appreciably quicker. Like, I think, we've had good teammates, but I think you always kind of knew, like, there were, I mean, this, yeah, you kind of knew, like, okay, it's that guy's the faster guy. Like, when, Ricardo challenged Verstappen's son, it was like, yeah, but Verstappen's faster.
Yeah.
Nico Rosberg was never faster than Lewis, even though he beat him that one year. It was all like the number of DNFs and all that was actually insane if you go back and look at it, in addition to the wrecking and some of it intentional from Nico. That, just the reliability issues that seem to only be plaguing Lewis's car kind of helped Nico out there. But and that's one of the reasons they retired. Is like there's no way I'm gonna ever be able to do this again. So I'm just done. If I come back, Lewis is gonna lap me on every race. Like I'm not gonna be able to handle that. So it's rare to have two guys that are this competitive, that are this good. We're kind of like, I don't know which one's better.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's changing. So yeah, it should be a fun time going forward. Well, after 6 hours, we've finally got to the race preview for the next race is in Austin, and guess what? One of my favorite segments on the show that we've ever done is back. Evan, I am going to stop sharing this thing and play a video of you taking us through the lap here of Austin.
Go for it.
Huh? I hit. It did show. It didn't show up, did it?
No.
Hold on. That's interesting. You have to reload it. Let's see. Let me try again. Okay. Hold on. Let me reload this. It's telling me it's doing it, but it's not. Believe it or not, we did test play this before for the show. Let's try again.
We go to start the
There
lap
it
here
is.
at Kota, climbing hard up
There
the
it is.
hill
All
into
right.
turn 1. It's a blind left-hand hairpin. Let the car drift wide on exit, downhill as we drop toward turn 2. Flat through this right-hand kink, now into the famous S's. Turns 3, 4, 5 and 6, left, right, all at incredible speed. Up the hill again to turn 7, short braking, flick left. The car compresses over the crest. Then right through turn 8, left for turn 9, and down the hill toward turn 10, a fast blind left. Keep momentum flowing, then heavy braking into turn 11, a tight left-hand hairpin. Hug the inside, feed in the throttle early. This is where the lap really breathes. Down the long back straight, DRS open once more, over 200 miles per hour. This top speed section demands precision before slamming the brakes for turn 12. A big stop, third gear, 90-degree left. Careful on exit, traction critical as we dive into the stadium section. Turn 13, short burst, flick right for turn 14, immediately into the tightening turn 15. The rear wants to step out here, keep it tidy, power down early for the triple right-hander. Turns 16, 17 and 18. The car's loaded up for ages through this sweeping Istanbul-style corner, full commitment, managing tyre scrub and G-forces. Now turn 19, fast left, almost flat if you dare, but watch the track limits. Finally, turn 20, downhill braking, the car wants to lock the rears, nail the late apex, power hard out, DRS open, and across the line. That's a lap of the Circuit of the Americas.
Yep, and there you can see the track on the fastest lap and the previous winner all coming up. Our man Charles Leclerc there, so high expectations for him this week. Great overview as always of the track. Love the sun setting motif. And that's another homage to Leclerc. Yeah, another homage to Leclerc. It is his time to shine. Let's take a look at the track layout. Evan, what stands out to you here?
Elevation. Elevation is the big thing with this track. It's the steepest climb that these cars do all year, going into that turn 1. Going all the way. I think it's 133 feet, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And that turn 1 always has something fun happening. Every single year you see this car start up. Lights out. Here we go, going up, climbing up that steep incline. Get into 5th and 6th gear, and then having to slow all the way down to 2nd gear. Something is going to happen. The track wise, besides for the race, that next section right there between 3, 4, and 5, the S's that are right in there, so difficult. It's one of those situations of these cars are gonna need a good amount of downforce, but the straightaways at this track are super long. The DRS is so powerful here, because of how long these straightaways are, and because of the fact that they are on inclines. The two DRS zones that we have here are on an incline. So not only are these cars having to have the downforce for these S's, for even that 6, 7, 8, 9, sequence right there. Yes, it's not as quick as 3, 4, and 5, but it's still tight turns where you have to have a good amount of downforce. Um, so like I said, those DRS zones are gonna big or play a big factor into this race, as they always do every year here at Coda. It's a fantastic track. Some of the most beautiful scenery that you'll see all year. Some of the best fans that you'll see all year. This is the American race that even though we live here in Miami and we love our race down here in South Florida, this is the race to go to if you're an American Formula One fan.
it's the accessible race too.
Yeah.
It's actually realistic to, like, the race here is insane. Like, we live here, and collectively, I've gone to one of the races as press, which was free.
Yeah.
And I know you went to some of the practice, but like, this is not affordable. You can't go to this race here. It's insane.
Exactly.
To sell my house or something. It's like,
I think it's
and
cheaper
Vegas is worse. Like, and so, like, this is the
for
race
us to fly to Austin to go
for
to
sure.
the race than
For
it is
sure.
for us to go to the race that's here in the city that we live in.
Right. And look,
So-
we obviously we live in Miami. We're from Miami. We love Miami. It is very much, when you do an event like Formula One in Miami, it is going to bring out the people that don't want to see the race. They want to be seen at the race. And
Exactly.
Formula One always has an element of that, but you add that with Miami, that's all you're going to get. And as you said, this is the true racing fans race in the United States. Vegas is not, Miami is not, this is.
Exactly.
This is where you're going to see the real racing. It's the out of the three tracks, it's by far the best one.
For sure.
And it's accessible to real racing fans who just want to see racing. And so, yeah, it's always a great race. It's a fun one. We'll see if Red Bull comes dressed as clowns again. There's always stuff to anticipate. Are they going to have the cowboy wear?
Danny Rick is definitely going to come out some.
Oh, yeah, Danny Rick will show up and be partying it up too. So yeah, there's all sorts of things that go down here. And then the track itself, obviously everything you said was spot on as usual in terms of like the layout. It's interesting because it's a purpose-built track, but they did borrow elements from other circuits, so you do see a little bit. It's not one-to-one copied, but
Yeah.
you do see a little bit of that throughout the circuit, which is why, as you said, you got to make hay on those DRS zones because there's a little bit of everything in there. Makes it very difficult to set up right. And the elevation changes as well add to that. And so, yeah, it's difficult. I would say it's the right level of challenging with the right level of ability to overtake as well. So I think that combination, this is usually one of the better races on the calendar. So definitely looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah. Your big overtaking spots are definitely going to be turn 11, turn 12, turn 1. And then it's always interesting to watch that turn 19 in qualifying because just like they said in the walkthrough, those cars are coming off of that 16, 17, 18 stretch, which is, it looks like one big corner to us, but it is more of a, decreasing radius or differing radius, turn. There's different apexes throughout that entire, section from 16, 17 through 18. So these cars are gaining a lot of speed there. And then going into 19, we've seen these guys go off the track there and have issues with, deletions and time deletions and stuff like that, similar to what we see at the Red Bull Ring, because it kind of does have that same feel there as the Red Bull Ring does in the final sector there at the Red Bull Ring. So it's definitely a fun track to see, both for qualifying and for the race. It's just a great place overall. It's one of the greatest tracks here in the United States.
Yeah, and to your point, in addition to what you said, that turn 19 is really crucial here because it's a setup. Even on the outlaps, that's the setup corner because you talked about this earlier, kind of with the start of the race. That start finish line's at the front of the straight, so usually it's middle or towards the end. It's the front, so it makes for a lot of excitement, as you said earlier, into the first corner because you've got a long run up and then it's all uphill. that also applies to the qualifying lap. Like you're going to start getting your time, start your timer right coming out of turn 20. Very, very, very little action out of there. So you got to get that momentum out of turn 19, hit your marks there to set up turn 20, and then get the right angle out of turn 20 to really get a good lap in for your qualifying lap, because you'll ruin your qualifying lap before you even started if you don't get those two corners right. So, and those are challenging corners. So it's a very, very exciting and interesting race. It's also, as we kind of look at the schedule a little bit, I mentioned this earlier, but it's a sprint weekend. So we've got practice 1 on Friday and sprint qualifying on Friday as well. That is at 1:30 and 5:30. And then Saturday, the sprint race itself is at 1 o'clock, and the qualifying is at 5 o'clock. And the race is 3 o'clock on Sunday. So a little bit of a different calendar, obviously, when you have the sprint race, but time zone wise, I'm gonna miss the morning ones, but it's still good if you like to sleep in. So I think for me, just mentally, like 5 o'clock qualifying, I'm like, what are we doing? But it feels late.
It's definitely gonna be interesting. It's definitely gonna be interesting for me that Sunday, because we'll be watching the Dolphins hopefully get a win. And
well,
you got
let's not get carried. Let's not get carried away here. But look, we're all optimistic in some regards in life, but let's not pretend like the Dolphins can win.
Who do the Canes play that weekend?
They play Louisville on Friday night, though.
Okay, so does that affect qualifying? Oh no, it's Friday night. So
no, it's Friday night. So sprint qualifying. Well, the game doesn't start till 7:30, but
okay.
But
so
I will not be watching sprint qualifying because I will be out at the Rock. But you're not missing the damn game. Just sit on my couch and watch the sprint qualifying.
I gotta give you the Formula One TV app. I got the login for you.
Oh no, I have that too, but I'm not going to be sitting there in the stands with my phone out there. That man,
you'll be
the game. Look, man, I can definitely stream it if I wanted to. I'm just not going to be. I'm not going to be thinking about sprint qualifying to see who's going to. Yeah, not when the Canes are about to play. Man, no, I love Formula One, but I'm not going to even pretend. I am honest with the audience. I am honest with you. If the Canes are involved, I mean, I don't even care if there's a race going on. So I will tell you one interesting thing though this weekend. We're going to pivot to predictions in a second. Before we get to that, this is another opportunity where they skipped a compound in the sequencing. So they've gone with 3 of the 4 hardest compounds. They've gone with the C1. Then the C3 and C4 for hard, medium, and soft. So there's no C2 this week. Every time they've done that this year, there's been weather. And we have not actually seen what will happen. It's always been a wet race or an opportunities intermediates, which meant they only had to use 1 compound of the dry. And so we've never actually had a full dry race with this configuration where if they want to go with a hard tire, they're skipping a step. It should be significantly slower than the medium and soft, but obviously last a lot longer. So that'll be interesting to see how they navigate, because we haven't really got a full opportunity to see that. And so far, the forecast is telling us that we should be able to. Looks like a perfect weekend for some good racing. So we should have the opportunity to see them navigate a skip in the tire step compound. So that'll be fun to see.
Is this the first time we've seen them do where the 2 that are next to each other are the harder tires, or the softer tires? I mean, because I always remember them like skipping. Like if they put on the C6, they had the.
I think you might be right.
4
You might be
and the
right.
3.
You might be right.
This is the first time.
I think so.
So that's going to be an interesting thing, because the medium and the soft are going to be closer to each other than where the hard is. So it's
and they theoretically should degrade a lot faster in this heat, especially. So we'll see if someone slaps the hards on and tries to go for an extra long stint. It's adding a variable, and again, it's pretty far out for the forecast. But so far, it looks like it'll be hot and it'll be dry, and they're gonna have to figure that out. And the other caveats all apply as normal, which is they don't get that many hard tires for the whole weekend. So if they want to use them, they kind of don't get to practice on them. They just kind of have to go for it. So,
They're going to be
yeah, and
so
with
different this week.
yeah, and with the sprint race too, it limits it gives them even less opportunity to practice setups, practice tires. So they're just gonna have to go for it, and probably won't see the hards until the race. And then if we start seeing it, it's gonna be kind of figuring out as they go. So that does throw another, like you said, very different from the medium and softs because there's a skip in there. So there's C2. Normally they're able to kind of figure it out by extrapolating out from, even though they can't run the hards really in practice if they want to use them in the race. Because it's weird, but they do different compound allocations, and they only give a couple of sets of hards for the whole weekend. So, this time it'll be harder to predict what the hard will do based off the medium and soft because there's a skip in there. So that'll be interesting to see. All right, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, huh? I believe it's time for predictions, Evan. So just again to bring us back to where we're at, there are 22 points between Oscar and Lando for the Drivers' Championship lead. There are 6 races to go. There's also a sprint race. So let's start with, I guess, give me your top 3, your surprise, and your sprint race winner.
Top 3, I'm going to go Max 1.
Ooh. Is Carly still here?
No, she's not here. I'm going to go Max 1. I'm going to go Lando 2. And I'm going to go Leclerc 3.
Ooh, so you have Lando take another step up here.
Yeah.
What is the surprise?
The surprise is going to be Hajar top 5. Hajar top 5.
Have they officially said that he's the Red Bull driver? I know there's all these rumors that's done, but man, what does that man have to do?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Hajar top 5. I think that there's gonna be situation in the race that they're gonna probably make a decision or two, to try to undercut somebody or to try to do something, and then maybe a yellow flag or a safety car or something like that comes out to where Hajar's gonna be up there battling, and you're gonna see him battling with like the Alonsos, the Colapintos, those guys in that 5, 6, 7 range, and he's gonna be able to be the one that's gonna stay ahead of him. I think Mercedes takes a step back this week. That they had good race overall. Obviously for both drivers in the top 5 this week. This is a completely different track. This is a completely different environment than what Singapore is, and I think that this is a type of track that those Mercedes aren't as good at. So I can see them being a little bit further back, maybe in that lower half of the top 10. And so I'm gonna go. That is my surprise. My sprint winner. I'm gonna go Lando with that one. I'm gonna say Lando wins the sprint, but doesn't win the actual race.
But you don't have Oscar in the top 3 either. So you got Lando making up some significant point ground this week. Maybe like 10 points out of that 22 chopped off.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Oscar being that 4th. Place driver somewhere right around there.
That'll be about 5, 6 points, I believe, the difference between 2nd and 4th.
Exactly.
So
and then
same thing
with the sprint race, he could be in that top 3, top 4.
Yeah, so another 3 or 4 points there. So about 8 to 10 points maybe he chops off and just makes it a little spicy with 5 races left after this weekend.
Exactly.
All right. After your analysis, I feel stupid, but I got Russell winning. So, and you tend to know your stuff, so I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. But Russell first, I got Lando second, Max third, surprise, Alonso top 5. I think he's driving at a really high level. He's very comfortable with that car. It's running well. If they don't have another 40-second pit stop or whatever, I think he can get up there. And then for the sprint, I have Oscar winning it. I think there'll be minimal movement towards Lando this weekend, not a lot. Again, there's 5 races left. So look, there's 6 races left, 22-point lead. He's got to make up 4 points a race to win the championship. If he makes up 4 points every race, he'll win the championship.
Yeah.
So that's his target. He made up 3 last week. So 4 points a race will get him to 24 points plus on the Oscar, who's obviously 22 points up, so he'll win by 2 points. So that's the goal, to average that out. We'll see where he stands after this week. I mean, he's one Oscar finishing ahead of him, essentially, away from being dead.
Oh yeah.
Barring like a catastrophe for Oscar with DNFs and stuff. He can still, right now, Lando can win the championship without Oscar having a calamity. But if there's any kind of backslide where Oscar even just finishes one spot ahead of him, the combination of losing points and one less race means that he'll probably need that DNF somewhere. But right now, finishing, again, there's a 7-point difference between first and second. If he wins, even if Oscar finishes second, that's 7 points. And then with 5 races left, now he only needs to make up 3 points a race. So, it's very doable when you start looking at the math, but he does need to consistently finish ahead of Oscar to make it happen.
What that takes is qualifying better, which has been kind of his.
Yeah, it's been a problem. It's been a problem for him. He's we said earlier, George Russell's nickname used to be Mr. Saturday. I mean, Lando's almost doing the opposite. It gets to that optimal point of qualifying where you got to put your best lap. It just never does it.
Yeah,
it's been a problem. It was a problem again this weekend. It's just, the number of times, especially recently, where we've been like, where did Lando's pace go in Q3?
Yeah, because you see him in FP1 top of the charts, FP2 top of the charts.
Yeah.
Q1 top of the charts, and then it's like.
Yeah, and then it starts to drop off, and it's just like everyone else kind of appears to have another, a little bit more in the car, which is normal. The times come down, you get through qualifying, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't appear to be able to reach out and pull that extra little bit out that everyone else seems to be able to find at the end of Q3. So we'll see. Again, races 2 weeks from now. It's the Friday to Sunday schedule we reviewed earlier with the sprint race as well. So there's sprint qualifying on Friday, and then the sprint race and qualifying on Saturday, and the race on Sunday. Evan, thanks for hanging out with me for an extended show today. We had a lot to talk about. It's McLaren Celebration Day, so we had to go long here. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll be back not next week, but the week after that, and review Austin, and hopefully have a tighter. Now we can full on just look. Until this thing closes up, we're just cheering for Lando. We've got the constructors. Nothing bad can happen there. We'd like to see a competitive title race down to the last race. So now we can just full on just cheer for Lando. I'm cool if Oscar DNFs once. I don't want multiples where then it ends up being that Lando's up big. But one DNF from Oscar will bring this thing right into play. And that's, I don't want anything like dangerous to happen, but, a little bit of the engine failed or something that's non-safe. That's non-dangerous, I should say. I think we'll all go for that to tighten this thing up a little bit.
For sure.
All right, Evan, thank you. Safe travels out west, and we'll talk to y'all in a couple weeks.
Yes, sir.